Hello, I'm J.R. Richardson. I am with Bellevue University. We are here today at the Military Veterans Services Center in Bellevue, Nebraska, and I am here today with Donnie Klaumann. And Don is a Army veteran of the Vietnam War, and Donnie is here to share his story. Today is the 31st of July, 2023. And Don, what I'd like to do is welcome you to the Veterans Center here. And if you could, just tell a little bit about your growing up and where you were born, when you were born, mom and dad, that kind of thing.
All right. Well, I appreciate being here. First of all, I got three other brothers, my older brother Dan, myself, my younger brother Dale, and another younger brother Doug. What's kind of unique about our family, all our first names start with a D, ends with a K, so it's not, there's six of us, so I grew up in a small town of Fairbury, Nebraska. It had a population back then of over 5,000 people, and I grew up with my brothers playing baseball. That's a big highlight for us. We were on several different Little League teams, Pony League, but we knew our town, and we were kind of left to roam the town, if you will, do what we want to do, but we'd always manage to get back home by the time lunch or dinner or supper was on. But we would go all over town, playing with our friends, baseball, football, that type of thing. And we got to know our town of Fairbury pretty well. A lot of people we knew. I started out when I was 8 years old with my first job as a newspaper carrier in downtown Fairbury. And I was the first one to ever do that type of a job, and I was 8 years old at the time. It allowed me to get the newspapers as soon as they came out, and I'd walk around town selling these newspapers to individuals that would want to buy them. And it got to the point, I guess, doing such a job like that, it made me kind of comfortable being able to communicate with people and not be afraid to walk up to them and talk to them. So I kind of give that to, my younger job experience. But like I said, I grew up in Fairbury. I've had numerous jobs throughout the course of my young years. I worked for a grocery store delivering groceries at noontime during the school year, and it would take me approximately a half hour to do this, and then I'd have to get back to school. But this was an ongoing job, and like I say, I worked throughout when I was 8 years old until basically I graduated from school and went on the next step. But that's pretty much my family. My dad was a Wonder Bread truck driver for many years. My mom had a beauty shop in Fairbury, and so they were real active within the community. So that's pretty much the size of it.
It sounds like Fairbury could be pictured very much like Mayberry when you look at a small town.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. You graduated there in Fairbury. What happened after graduation?
Well, I graduated in 1966. Shortly my senior year, a couple other friends of mine, we all three decided that we would go into service together. And at that point in time, we all decided to go in the Navy, and at that time the Navy had a program called 120-day delay program. And basically what that meant was you had 120 days prior to going to your basic training. But I enlisted in April of 1966, like I mentioned, with a couple other guys, and we were all scheduled to go up to Omaha, which we did, and be sworn in. And so we came up to Omaha at the recruiting center. We got sworn in and went back home and enjoyed 120 days of freedom. Do you want me to go into?
Yeah, if you would, that would be
Okay.
good. That story you shared with me on how you ended up over on the Army side.
Okay. Well, anyway, being on 120 days delay, not only the three of us, but as most of us did back then, we kind of held various parties and farewells and that type of thing. And a couple of us decided to have a party, and we decided to have this party in Kansas, and which you were legal age then to drink. And so we were having this particular party, and somehow the word got out, because hundreds of people showed up at this party, and not all were of age. And this party happened to get raided by law enforcement in not only Kansas but Nebraska. And what happened there, my younger brother Dale happened to be there when the law enforcement came to the location where we were having this party. All the younger kids took off, leaving their vehicles, take off running, and trying to hide for whatever reason, because it didn't make any difference. But my younger brother Dale happened to lose his glasses, which was kind of ironic, because he had to go back the next day and look for him. But to make a long story short, we were away from the party at the time, running out of beer, and so we went back to town to get more. And we ended up, when we were coming back, we seen all these lights in the distance, and we pretty much stayed away from the area, but until the next day. That's another story in itself. But getting back to being enlisted in the Navy and on the 120-day delay program, I was out one night with some friends, barefooted. It was late at night, and I walked to the side of the house, and somehow somebody had dropped a beer bottle or pop bottle, and it had broken, which I didn't know, and I walked right on top of this bottle, and it cut my foot open on the bottom side, and it cut some tendons. It done some pretty good damage. And I remember hobbling to the front door, and I was bleeding real bad, and my mom came to the door, and we ended up going to the hospital in Fairbury, and from there they rushed me up to Lincoln, where they performed surgery, and I had several stitches and what all they did to the cut to make make everything's, good again. But anyway, this caused me to miss my deadline date of my 120 days delay, and the service officer knew about it. He contacted the Navy. The Navy decided to give me because I could not meet this deadline, they gave me a temporary, they called it a temporary honorable discharge from the Navy. And I really didn't think much of it at the time, but basically I was not enlisted in the Navy anymore. So I'd have to basically go through the same process again if I wanted to go in the Navy. So being as I was under doctor's care, approximately maybe a month later, I finally got released from the doctor, and I remember very shortly thereafter I got my classification changed to, I think it was 1A, and I received information that I was drafted in the Army. So basically I had no choice but to go in the Army. I couldn't re-enlist in the Navy, and the sole purpose of me going in the Navy in the first place was because my older brother Dan was in the Navy, and to think in my mind that, boy, those uniforms are really sharp, I'm going to do the same thing. And that's how I got involved in wanting to go in the Navy. So anyway, at that point, I got my notice to go to basic training. From then, talk a little bit more about this party they held for me. Of the three of us that were due to go in the Navy, two of my best friends ended up going in the Navy, and I went in the Army. So we kind of talk about that today, about how I found a way to get out of going into the Navy. So, but it was kind of ironic. You want me to go into the basic training?
Yeah, let's go with basic training and then technical school. That would be good.
Okay.
But if you could share basic.
Sure. Of course, I spent my 8 weeks at basic training, and I received, while you're in the basic training, you take various tests and so forth to see your qualifications and what, how the Army could utilize you. And this was something that was kind of ironic as well, because I had a friend in the basic training that was a auto mechanic, and we would talk, and he said, "Well, I hope I can get into that same field when I get my orders," because he already knew how to repair vehicles and so forth, so he could go right into doing mechanics in the Army. And what's ironic about this is that when the orders came out for AIT, I was the one that got advanced infantry training in heavy equipment maintenance, and my friend that was a mechanic had to go infantry. And so with me going into AIT, I had to go to Fort MacArthur, California for this training.
Where did you do basic at?
Fort Benning, Georgia, a place they called Sand Hill. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's just a term that they had because the whole facility was built around sand, and it was very hot, very humid, and I enjoyed the Army. I was glad to be there. My dad was World War II veteran. He's seen a lot of combat, and I guess with me going into the Army, it brought my dad and I a little bit closer because he was in that type of service.
And then you had mentioned after Fort Benning, you went to AIT
Right.
at that time.
From that point, we went to Fort MacArthur, California, and nobody in basic training knew where that post was. And I've checked with many people, and nobody seemed to hear about it. Well, I just left it up to, I traveled there, and I come to find out that this was really a luxury of a place to take AIT. It was almost in the heart of San Pedro, California. It was 30 miles south of Los Angeles. If anybody wanted to be in a training facility, that would be an excellent place to be. And so I felt very lucky at that point in time to be there. I did take heavy equipment maintenance, and so daily I would learn how to repair trucks and Jeeps and basically any kind of engine. That's also the same place where I met my closest friend to this day, J.C. Brewer, who is very much in the Army. He was I'm not sure what he got out as, but we try to see each other every year or two and get together and spend time together. But this is where I met Jay, and him and I both went through AIT together. He was involved in recreational type services for the military, and of course I was in heavy equipment maintenance. But we grew to know each other. We were very close friends, and we even got our orders for Vietnam at the same time. So we left at the same time on a 30-day delay program, and we got our orders for Vietnam. I knew his mom, and he knew my parents, and to finish with the story, I'll tell later on that how we came about seeing each other in Vietnam, which was kind of cool. But you want me to go on after AIT? Or?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Well, one thing I'd like to mention about AIT is I had the opportunity to be on honor guard. They were asking for people to help, and I thought that would be something that I could really give back to the soldiers. So I volunteered to be on honor guard, and this was honor guard at that time. We were graded by officers how well we did, but we would travel a 300-mile radius of Fort MacArthur, and we would do funerals sometimes 2-3 times a day, depending on the casualties that would come in. But it seemed like I'd been to most cemeteries in that area. at that time because of the number of services that we performed. We were always graded on how well we did, and it's always an honor to be able to do something like this. So anyway, moving on, after our 30-day program, or after our 30-day leave, we had to report to, or I had to report to Fort Lewis, Washington, and my orders were scheduled to fly Seaboard World Airlines from Fort Lewis, Washington to Japan, and then from Japan on to Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam. I got my orders, I reported there, we boarded the plane, which was a commercial airlines at that time. It carried 214 passengers plus the crew, and this particular airlines, it was all military personnel going to Vietnam. We took off from Tacoma Air Force Base, and shortly after we got in the air, I fell asleep. I was kind of at the back of the plane next to the window and on the left side of the wing, and I fell asleep just because of being so extremely tired from all the traveling and everything. But I don't know how long I was sleeping, but I was woke up with a lot of the guys on the plane yelling and hollering, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and one of the guys, after I woke up, one of the guys said, well, look out the window. And so I did look out the window, and there was a Russian MiG flying right next to our wingtip. It just seemed like they were very close to touching the wing, but you could clearly make out the pilot, and they were just flying on a steady course right beside us. And of course I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I thought, well, shoot, maybe we're getting escorted into Japan. And then it hit me, well, it's not a red circle, it's a star, which indicated Russia. So shortly the captain or the pilot on the plane came across on the intercom and indicated that the MiG is on the left side of the plane. They want us to descend because you could see the pilot motioning with his thumb down to start descending. And the pilot said, well, we're going to stay on this steady course and not deviate from it, which is what we did. And a short time later, another Russian MiG came up on the other wingtip on the other side. So there we had two MiGs side by side with us. And when the one on the right side was level with our wingtip, the one on the left side dropped down. I watched him out of the window, and he dropped straight down, and he came up in front of the wing of our plane and fired rounds from his machine guns. You could see the smoke and everything rolling from the guns. And then a short time later, we started banking and followed where they wanted us to go. Well, we weren't that far from the landing strip. I'm looking up the place where they brought us down. Let's see. The island was called Ithrup, I-T-U-R-U-P Island. This was just off the coast of Russia, and the airstrip was designed pretty much for small aircraft. And here we were a large aircraft with 214 military on, and the captain told us that he told us the circumstances with a short runway, and as soon as he landed, he braked right away, and we were able to stop. We taxied up to the buildings or shacks that were very close to the main airstrip, and the nose of our plane taxied right close to their, what I call shacks or buildings. These buildings were nothing more than framework houses made out of wood, very simple, very basic, no brick and mortar type structures, and we taxied pretty close to them, maybe within 50 yards of one of the buildings, and the captain shut the engines down, and we were in total darkness. We were told to pull our shades drawn, and we were in total darkness inside the plane. And pretty soon the door opened up, and we had two Russian soldiers come on board, and we didn't really know what they wanted because we could not communicate with them because of their speech. But they held up a garbage bag, if you will, or a bag, and they motioned, they grabbed a camera and they motioned for the camera to go in the bag, and our ID, they held up a little card to indicate a ID that we were supposed to throw that in the bag. So they started coming down the aisle, and I was kind of at the back of the plane, and I had a little Instamatic camera that I took with me, and I only had 6 exposures on it, but I took like 3 or 4 in the air with the Russian MiG, and then I took some of the surrounding area with the rest of the film that was in the camera. And as they were walking down the aisle, I took the film out and stuffed it between the seat cushion and the frame of the seat, between my legs, and closed the camera back up and just waited for them to walk by. And when they walked by, they had the bag open, and I just took my ID and my camera and just threw it in the bag, and they just kept on walking. Well, we were there for 3 days and 4 nights. The first day we ran out of food right away. The latrines, bathrooms were already full, and so the Russians, they allowed us to get off the plane 25 at a time, and they had a outdoor outhouse quite a ways from where the plane was, and we were able to go there. But they guarded us all while we walked down there, while we came back. We had about 12 people around the plane with AK-47s that were there all the time we were there. While we were on the plane, some of the guys, you're talking to all the people on the plane, and you hear all these stories. Some guys were talking about trying to escape, and where they would escape to, I have no clue, but because we had water all around us, but they were talked about during that. We had stewardess on the plane that some guys had guitars, and so the stewardess and the guys that had guitars, we would sing songs and stuff like this, just to pass time. One of the things I did was I just kind of made a documentary, if you will, of everything that took place. I had several pages of what transpired, and I'd done this pretty much the whole time while I was on the plane, and until we got to Vietnam. But going on, if you can imagine being on the plane that duration, everybody was getting hungry. There was no food. Finally, the Russians brought food on the plane in the way of bread, butter, and cheese. And that's all we had for the remainder of the time while we were on that island. I remember the blocks of cheese were like, they were about a foot square, maybe 20 pounds of cheese, 20 pounds of butter. Huge loaves of bread were brought on, and that's what we ate along with water. And this went on again for the duration of the time we were there. We finally got the okay from the Russians to leave because the United States has sent in a helicopter interpreter, and we were now able to communicate with the Russians, and they determined that we did cross the air boundary of Russia, and that's why we were forced down. During this time, my folks received telegrams. Here's one that was sent by Western Telegram. You want me to read that, or?
If you'd like to read it, we certainly would like to get a copy of it for sure.
It's pretty basic. It was to my mom and dad. It says, and some of it's information I can't decipher, but it says between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Don't phone report. DLY, whatever that is. 819 E Street, Fairbury, which is where I live. This is to inform you that your son, Private First Class Donald L. Klaumann, was a passenger on the aircraft that was forced to land at a Soviet base while on a flight from McCord Air Force Base, Washington, to Yokota Air Force Base in Japan. The airplane captain reported after landing that there was no damage to the aircraft or injuries to the passengers or crew. The Department of State is in contact with the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. You will be promptly advised as additional information is received. And that's from Major General Kenneth Wickham. They also got a telegram indicating our release, which I got a copy of here. But I also have pictures of the pictures I took. This one here was up in the air. These are Russian MiGs that were beside our plane. They appear to be non-functional because several of them had flat tires and they were totally covered up, which is probably a normal, but they didn't look like they could really fly for whatever reason.
How did you get those pictures?
Right out the window.
While you were on the ground?
Yeah.
Did you you had another camera then?
Well, no. I took the pictures right away when we landed.
Oh, before they went to confiscate. Oh yeah, you said you used up the rest of your film.
Yeah, and then I stuffed it between my seat. But it's kind of funny because I have to show you here. This is a picture that showed up, or an article in Life magazine of July 19th, 1968, where this was one of the stewardess on the plane, which she's got an instamatic camera, but she had taken these pictures, which are almost identical to what mine was. But I mean, she had the same view. This is showing how close they were to the wingtip. And anyway, it was a nice article, and my folks sent it to me, and I got additional copies of that so I could give it to my kids. But moving on, as I mentioned before, we were there for 3 days and 4 nights, and one of these pictures shows the buildings that were there in front of the plane. And what happened was, once they determined that we crossed the air boundary and the Russians, for whatever reason, decided to let us go, the captain came back on, indicated that we had clearance to take off again.
Was that 3 days then?
Yeah. One of the things that's kind of ironic about this is, like I mentioned earlier, we taxied right up to the buildings, and the engines were shut off and everything was shut down. But when we got the clearance to leave, the Russians told the captain that we could not start the engines until the aircraft was away from the buildings far enough to where we would not damage them. And they would not give any equipment to us to move that aircraft. You're wondering probably, how in the world did we move that plane? Well, the captain told everybody that they gave us a rope, a twine rope, which was about that big around, and I can't even guess how long it was. And he told everybody on the intercom that we had to move the plane by hand. Now, he also told us where we could get off the plane and where we could actually push or pull that plane, and hopefully with all of us that were there, we could move the plane. Well, they tied the rope onto the front landing gear, and again, I have no clue how long it was. Maybe a football field, somewhere in that vicinity. I happened to be on one of the wheels of the plane, which the wheels were probably a good 5 feet high, I'm guessing. Well, we could push on the wheels, and of course there was 2 sets on both sides, so there are basically four wheels on the back side that we could actually push. And with everybody pulling in the front, we actually moved the plane probably maybe 100 yards away from the building, maybe a little bit farther, but we didn't move it very fast. It was very, it took a lot to get the wheels moving, and but once we did, it did move pretty easy once we got it moving. So anyway, we got it away. They started the engines. Everybody was hollering and yelling, glad to leave. We went to the end of the landing strip, took off, and we were finally airborne again. We got to Japan, and an Air Force major came on board, and he said to everybody that because of our ordeal, we can have anything we want to eat, because he figured we were all starving. Anything we wanted to eat at all, steaks or whatever. And the Air Force were going to take care of it. Well, if you can imagine, we had bread, butter, and cheese for 3 days. So needless to say, a lot of us didn't even eat. We were so bloated from what we had ate before. But I want to point that out because it was kind of funny that they brought that up. Anyway, from there we flew on to Cameron Bay. And from there I took a C-130 to Benoit Air Base. And I ended up going to the 199th Infantry, which was right close to Benoit Air Base. And that was that situation there.
All right. All right, so now we're in Vietnam and you got about a year's worth. I got to ask you, were there any decorations or citations or any official documentation showing you're being held? Because essentially you were captive.
Yeah, and I've always thought about that.
Have you sought any assistance in?
No, I haven't.
Well, maybe that's something we can look into.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. As we move on and stuff.
Wow.
We got a lot of things on our plate that we're working with, but we'll just add that to it because that's very intriguing.
Right.
Let's jump to Vietnam then.
Okay.
Since now you're a local hero, get to your assignment.
Not really.
Yeah, I would think that you would stand out quite a bit, you know. But how about your day-to-day assignment in Vietnam? What was that like?
One of the things I started doing was working on heavy equipment. Like I mentioned, I went to AIT. I had the training, and I was probably in country for a couple weeks doing mechanical work, and the officer, a captain, came up to everybody in the motor pool area and asked if anyone knew how to type. And you know, Christ, I learned typing when I was in high school, and I'm not sure what he wanted, but I says, yeah. A couple of us raised our hands, and so he got with both of us, and said, hey, I need someone to help with like office type work. And I told him, well, I can, you know, but I wouldn't be doing my AIT qualification. He said, well, that's fine, don't worry about that. and so I told him I would help him, and I really didn't know what I was getting into, but I went up to his office. They showed me around. Of course, the office was a barracks, kind of like a barracks. Anyway, they decided to have me help them, and that eliminated me from doing any mechanic work. And actually, it wasn't too bad at all. I mean, I thought being in Vietnam to do something like this would be awesome. Well, that's what I did most of the time, or the rest of the time I was there in Vietnam. But also, I was in charge of a bunker on the perimeter of the 199th, and I had an M60 machine gun. There's about 3 or 4 other guys that was in that particular bunker with me, and whenever we go on red alert or caution alert, we'd run down to the bunker and man our guns and just wait for things to happen. And so that was the other part of my duty. No matter what you were doing, if you went on red alert, that's the first place you went right there was to the bunker. And it so happens that during the Tet offensive earlier that year, the Viet Cong had broke into that area where our bunker was on the post, and therefore it was, we were told this through talking to the guys that this is where they got into the 199th, and so I was always very cautious and very concerned that if they've done it once, they're going to do it again type thing. And whenever we went on red alert, we were always very suspicious that this is going to happen again to us. So we had Claymore mines set up and the M60 machine gun and we had night vision and the whole works. And I remember one particular night, we went on red alert. We had incoming, and I remember running to the bunker, zigzagging, thinking, okay, I'd make a harder target if I was doing this zigzagging, going down to the bunker. And I don't know why that stuck out, but I remember doing that clear as a bell. When I got down to the bunker, and of course others started showing up, and I had night vision, and on red alert, if you seen movement ahead of you, you could open fire. And through the night vision, I did see some bushes moving about 200 yards out. Well, I did open fire, and come to find out, I shot a water buffalo that I'm not real proud of, but that was real sacred to the Vietnamese, and but I had no clue what was there other than I just seen that moving. But anyway, that's something I wanted to point out. We never had any Viet Cong penetrate the base since I was there. We had a lot of incoming, a lot of rockets from Benoit area, and I remember one guy that got killed because he was due to go to Long Binh to the center to be sent home after his tour of duty, and he never made it. The rocket came in and hit the area where he was at. We also had the closest I ever came to getting hit was the barrack next to us. Got hit one night, and but stuff like that happened all the time. So
Just kind of the day-to-day.
yeah, that's right.
And you evidently lost the one gentleman that
Oh, yeah.
got hit. Were there other casualties from your location during your time there?
Yes, of course we had the infantry there, stationed there. I was in the motor pool area, and there's casualties all the time. Different situations. I brought back a SKS from Nam, and I just don't really care to go into how that came about, but there was casualties.
And I imagine that it meant a lot more to you. Not that anybody felt that was light, but with your prior service as a honor guard, I'm sure that you took those casualties real hard. You mentioned that you ran into your best friend while you were in Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
That you guys are in different locations.
Oh, yeah.
How did that come about that where you found each other?
Okay, well, like I say, he knew my parents, I knew his mom. Anyway, I wrote his mom to find out where Jay was at, and he did the same thing with my folks. And come to find out, we were about 30 miles apart, and I was able to take a day off one day and travel to where he was located, and which again was about 30 miles away. His job at the time when I found him, he was driving a road grader, what I call a road grader, and he was really quite surprised to see me. And after that point, he was able to come to the 199th whenever he had a day. We were so close to, together, 30 miles was nothing, so you could hop a Jeep or something like this and ride to that location. So that made the stay in Vietnam a lot better. Just knowing, somebody you knew, was there. So even to this day, like I mentioned, Jay and I are very close.
So how often do you get a chance to visit with Jay?
We call each other off and on, maybe half dozen times a year, but we'll get together personally about once every 2 years. And we played golf together. We talked about our friends in service and what they're doing now, where they're at, and we're just pretty close.
Where's Jay from originally?
He's from Urbana, Ohio. His mom is a single parent, and she has obviously since passed away. But I call her mom, just like my own mom.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And is he in Ohio now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a truck driver. He's close to being retired. He did stay in the Army for 20 years. He got his retirement. They wanted me to re-up when I was in Vietnam, and that was the wrong place to ask if you want to stay in the Army. So no way was I going to stay in the Army after being there. I didn't even go on R&R while I was there. I could have, but if I would have done that, chances are I might have just kept on going.
Yeah.
Kept on going.
Well, I understand it's to break up that tour. You get that opportunity.
Yeah.
So, what happened coming home from Vietnam? Where were you assigned?
I went back to Tacoma, Washington, is where I came in. I had a friend that lived in San Pedro, which is she was a close friend to Jay. Matter of fact, they communicated back and forth while in and I went there and seen her and just spent some time in California. I went to Pasadena. I went to night school. I wanted to be a draftsman. So I went to night school there to hold a job, and then I took correspondence courses while I was there also. So
now, were you still in the Army at that time? Taking night
no,
school?
I got my release. to go on home, and I just decided to stay out in California for a while.
Okay. So from Tacoma, Washington, you went to California?
Yeah.
What town in California?
I went to San Pedro, that's Sanpedro, and then I went up to Pasadena, and that's where I went to school up there.
Went to night school and
Yeah.
studied what?
Drafting and architecture, and I had a job with Burroughs Manufacturing during the day and stuff. So
And I'm sorry, Don, one more time. What did you study? Drafting?
architecture and drafting, and I never got a degree. I never finished it because I got a call from my brother that my mom was real sick, and so I decided to leave school and head home to be there, and so I just basically left everything behind and took off for back to Fairbury.
Do you remember how long a time period that was? Were you in California a year, 2 years? Or?
I was only in California for maybe I'd say probably 4 months, 4 or 5 months.
And then so you just stayed in Nebraska from there?
Yeah. That's where I met my wife, and she was going to junior college in Fairbury, and we finally got married in Fairbury and moved out to Indiana shortly thereafter, and
All right, I'm trying to catch up here a little.
okay.
One of the things you haven't mentioned yet is coming home. Some of the stories that we have from our Vietnam veterans, there was still a lot of animosity towards the war itself, and it seemed like a lot of that was taken out on the GIs.
Yeah.
I would think that if you were to stack the states up, California certainly would be one of those hot spots.
Yep.
So how did you handle that going to a night school? Did you let your hair grow long? I mean, did you talk about it with people? Did you keep it kind of under wraps? How did you go about your day-to-day with the war behind you?
Well, after we got back to Tacoma, Washington, we were told by GIs that were there that you don't want to wear your uniform in public. And that was pretty hard to take because I was very proud of what I did. When we landed, there was nobody at the airport to clap your hands and wave the flags like they do nowadays, and it didn't make sense to me. Like I told you, they told us not to wear uniforms because of all the problems in the United States. And I hate to say this, I did change into civilian clothes. I did travel to, when I was in San Pedro and Pasadena, like you mentioned, there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of problems going on with the hippies and long hairs and all that going on. It was just hard for me to understand all that. How could they show that kind of hatred to the military? And anyway, I didn't talk about my military experience much at all, only to my friends that I met out in California. And not everybody had that type of feeling. There's only certain ones. The people I knew were happy that I served, or they seemed to be, and obviously my parents were too. But that was really a bad time. So. I've always supported the United States and the military. I was always proud to have the uniform on, but that situation just didn't make sense.
Do you have any of your uniform items left at all?
Oh yeah, I've got. Of course, I can't get in it anymore, but I've got. Oh yeah, all my medals, my uniform. Matter of fact, I gave each one of my two kids, copy of all my medals, and I got the accommodation, good conduct. There's a Vietnam, I can't remember.
Campaign medal?
Yeah. And defense medal, all those kind of things. But we just kind of made a flag of a background of a flag or of a plaque, and put all this stuff on there. So each one of my kids had one of my dog tags.
So are your children married with children?
Oh yeah, I've got a boy and a girl. My son lives in Texas. He's married. They don't have any kids. My daughter lives on the acreage in Murdoch, and they've got two kids, a boy and a girl. So, and that's of course why we moved up by Murdoch, to be close to the grandkids.
And how old are they right now?
Nolan is 16 and Ella is 13, and that's really the sole reason why we moved up here. So
that's neat. It took us a while to get back home, but my kids got a chance to get to know my mom and dad a little bit before they passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish they would have had more time, but at least they had some.
Sure.
But want to give you an opportunity to jump in the future a little bit for your great grandkids, and here's a chance to leave them a message. We talked about some of the things going on in our country. You're a man that I salute your service. We talked a little bit, about my military. This is about you, and we salute you and thank you very much for your service.
Sure.
So as we leave, if you would like to leave any special note about what service means to you or your country, or because a lot of younger people are having to make that decision, and unfortunately for us, there's less than 1% of our youth that join the military, less
Sure.
than 1%.
Wow.
And we don't join the military to go to war. We're the last ones that want to do that.
Yeah.
But we sign that check
Mhm.
and do what we need. But I'll let you speak, and
Well,
we'll conclude it with that.
I've already, not only to my grandkids, but to my younger brother's son, he was struggling with, got a lot of problems. He's headed down the wrong road, and they didn't know what to do. And I told my brother, I says, get him in service. They will change him. They will, if you will, get his head screwed on right, and it'll do wonders for him. And they did exactly that. The son is very well respected. He's been in service. He's already re-upped for a second time. He's got a good future ahead of him. But anyway, that's just one story that military, military is a great future for kids that don't know what they want to do, where they want to go. I have always supported the military, the United States. Let's see. If I were to say anything to my grandkids, the United States is a great, wonderful place to live, and if they were able to see other countries, how they live, and survive, not only my grandkids, but others, they may respect more of what they have. The Vietnamese were to me, very poor people. I've even ate dinner with Mama San, if you will. But they're also happy people, and they take pride in what they do have, and they will share what they have with you, even though they may not have a whole lot. I had a dinner with a Mama San, Ed Jay, my buddy Jay was there, and we ate lunch with them. But people need to look at what they have compared to other countries. And I've told, all these years, I've told people how other countries are, at least the ones where I was, and they should appreciate what they have. But I just hope they don't have to have any type of fighting or that type of thing going on in their lives. I think our country is, this is my own opinion, is in very rough state right now. That with things going on in the world, that I don't know where we're headed, but I just hope they don't have to do any type of fighting like what we did.
Well, Thank you very much for your service. I don't want to cut off your thought there.
Yeah, that's fine.
If you were to, it's not an easy task what I'm about to ask, but if you were to sum up in just one or two words, literal words, what you took away, what your experience, what stays with you every single day, it's now a part of you. What would you say that would be?
I say probably love of my country.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And thank you very much.